We literally had people that dropped off their chair on their knees, just crying because of the response they got and recognizing the voice. It has the ability to challenge science as we know it today. It has the ability to challenge religion. The possibilities are endless. And the real question then becomes is the world ready for something like this?
With me today is Tony Rathman. Thanks for being here, Tony. I've been very much looking forward to our conversation.
Pleasure to be here, Rod. I can't wait to have this discussion and been looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I think where I wanted to start, I usually start with the background, but I understand that you, we're going to get into your technology and stuff, but you didn't even sort of believe in anything esoteric up to about 15 years ago, and somebody pushed you into it, your first ghost hunt. So, can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't really believe, anything about spirits. Um, my father, when I was growing up, was a physics professor for 46 years. So when I asked a question, Dad, why is the sky blue? I got a materialistic scientific answer. Well, it's blue because combination between the ozone layers and, if there's vapor in the air, or if there's water in the air, blue's the most reflective color. And when the sun hits it, that's why the sky looks blue. Nothing about spirits. And so, yeah, when I met my wife, she loved paranormal shows, and she'd always say to me, "Come over here, you got to watch this." And I'd last about 2 minutes, and then I'd get up and I'd be like, "Come on, none of this is real. This is for television entertainment only. How can you think this is real?" And then I'd get up and I'd walk away. But then it was 2010, and it was Valentine's Day weekend. And I said, "Hey, what do you want to do this year for Valentine's Day?" And she said, "I want to do something different." I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" She said, "I want to go ghost hunting." And I was like, "Oh, you're kidding me." But I had two choices. I could take her or have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. I didn't want that. So I did a little internet research, booked a place that had a reputation that it was supposedly haunted, booked it for the weekend, thought I was done. And then I remember, out of the maybe 6 total minutes over the last few months of having her make me sit down and watch a little bit of these shows, I noticed they were using equipment. So I went out, bought her night vision camera, EMF meter, and digital recorder. I thought, okay, I'm done. So we went for the weekend. She had a blast. That was all I really cared about. I played along. I asked questions. I took pictures. We videotaped stuff. And she had a really good time. And I thought, okay, this is done. This equipment will sit in the closet until we sell it or throw it out. But when she started reviewing it, what really caught my attention were EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena. We were the only two people up at 2 in the morning, and we were in the basement of this hotel, which we probably weren't even supposed to be. But there was nobody awake. There was no one around. And we were asking questions and getting responses with timing, relevance, and intelligent. They would actually respond to the question asked. That blew my mind. And I tried to debunk it. Finally, I couldn't. And I said, let's go back. Maybe there's an air vent that voices were coming through, or maybe some of the weird anomalies in pictures were some light outside coming through a window. Well, we went back. None of that was the case. There was no air vent with voices coming through. There was no windows shining lights through. And we came back with even more evidence, more voices. And that's how it all began. And now, 15 and a half years later, we've been focused on communication, voices, and it has led us to what we now have developed, which is called Staticom 3.0.
Excellent. So, was that, um, did you have like an experience that you would say, well, that's impossible, that really made you realize that you had to dedicate yourself to building something better than just those tools that you took that first time?
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions I asked, I would say something really simple like, are there any spirits here? And then I'd wait a little bit, And then I'd say, okay, can you tell me your name? Well, that's what really caught my attention, that EVP. Because when I said, what's your name? The voice on the recorder um, said her name, because it was a female voice. She said her name was Candy. And then we went back. I think we investigated that hotel like over 50 times, but we kept going back. And I would actually ask for Candy, both using a digital recorder, or as we advanced, a spirit box, and she would literally reply. She would say, "Yes, I'm here," and that would either show up on the recorder or through a spirit box, which is supposed to be two-way communication. But that absolutely just blew my mind. I didn't know how this was occurring. I knew nobody was there. No one was in the room. There was no other physical live body to be sending their vocal. And if they even were, we'd hear with our own ears. These responses we did not hear, not until going back and replaying the recorder.
So tell us about our spirit box because I don't know what they are, and I'm sure a lot of people watching don't know. So how does that work?
Okay, so a spirit box is different from using a digital recorder. A digital recorder is considered record and review, meaning you turn the recorder on, you set it down, and you ask all your questions, pausing in between and giving them time to respond. Then you shut the recorder off, you pack up, you go home, you take the recorder to your computer, you upload the file, you will probably denoise it. You'll probably increase the volume, trying to hear what's said. You may speed it up, slow it down, reverse it, whatever you have to do to find out if there's messages being left and try to figure out what they're saying. A spirit box, or what was originally considered the Frank's box, built by Frank Sumption, was literally a radio that would scan up and down the dial. And the purpose of it was that spirits were supposed to take fragments of audio when it scanned quickly through radio stations, take those fragments and then rearrange them into their own sentences. Now, we believe that was possible when we started out. We no longer believe that today. Why? Because we realize that anytime the sweeping spirit box hit a radio station, it cut off their communication completely, which is why responses on a spirit box are so brief, a word, two, maybe three, if you're lucky. But you would never get full sentences or full communication. It was always get out or stop or leave, short responses. When we figured out that they didn't need the radio at all and they only needed white noise, that's when we took a method that was called direct radio voice, which is where we started. Direct radio voice was similar to a spirit box because it used a radio, but it didn't scan the stations. It sat on a vacant frequency or just white noise. This was developed by a gentleman named Friedrich Jurgensen. Friedrich Jurgensen passed it on to both Konstantin Radova as well as a gentleman named Marcello Bacci. And Marcello Bacci used it for about 35 years, literally being able to have communication and invite the public, people who had lost loved ones, whether it be children, parents, significant others, and get responses from it. Well, he did this for years, and finally, he was pulled into a scientific lab, and the scientist literally ripped apart his radio trying to see when the voices would stop coming through. And they took out vacuum tubes because these were old radios. They still used vacuum tubes. They ripped them out one at a time to figure out where the voices stopped coming in. Well, guess what? The voices didn't stop coming in, and they could not debunk or validate, for that matter, where these voices were coming from. All they could determine was the only thing they could remove from the equation to get the voices to quit were Marcello Bacci himself. When they took him out of the equation and they tried to ask questions, they didn't get responses.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? It's like it's almost like being a channel. A channel is often you often deploy other tools or things external to themselves to kind of help refine that message as it comes through. It sounds like that's what he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination between the equipment and the operator who's using it. And if there is a connection, that they trust you, that they feel that your intentions are right, they will communicate. And we've shown that. I mean, we'll do public demonstrations with Staticom, and a lot of people come up, ask their questions, and they'll get a direct response. Other people, they'll ask, and I'll say, well, okay, ask again. And they'll ask twice and nothing. But when I then say, okay, spirits, did you hear this lady ask this? Then the response comes through. So it's about 40% of it is the technology. And I think the other 60% is the connection from the operator doing it.
So, how did you obviously you started using the tools, those additional tools that were available, and then how did that then evolve to something where you started tinkering around with engineering yourself?
We completely took the direct radio voice method and tried to figure out what the biggest complaints or concerns with it were. The first concern was that it was using a radio. If you talk to academics, science, skeptics, they'll say, wait, you're telling me you're getting voices from the other side, but the device that you're using is a radio. How on earth would you distinguish reception from deception? How can you tell me that voice is not a stray radio wave and tell me it's a voice from the other side when a radio is made to take RF signal in the atmosphere and turn it into either speech or music? Perfectly good complaint. So we knew we had to remove the radio. That was step one, which we did. When we realized that they weren't using the radio waves and it was just causing additional clutter in the sound, making it even harder to hear what they were saying, we took the radio out and replaced it with a white noise generator. White noise generator creates every sound from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, which would basically be every sound the human ear can hear and a little bit outside of it. Once you get in above like 16,000, you get into where dogs hearing can hear, but a lot of humans lose it at about 16,000 hertz. But anyway, it contains no vocal data whatsoever, no sentences, no words, no syllable. Voices don't exist in white noise. And the other nice part about it is that it has a spectral frequency of 1, meaning that every sound from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz is at the same volume, same level. And that is why you don't hear individual sounds. You only hear that shh of white noise sound because they're all even. Well, that worked out really well for us to advance the clarity of the speech because when a spirit would speak, we believe that it overlaps a handful of frequencies within the white noise. And there's a physics principle called stochastic resonance. Stochastic resonance is taking a sound that can't be heard by the human ear or detected by a detector and elevates it. It's used in medical devices and all sorts of other equipment for that exact purpose. So then what we did was we applied that white noise to DRV, turning it into Staticom once the radio went away. And that allowed us more control over the voices that were coming through. Now, the next problem is that academics and science again would say, well, you're not really hearing voice, speech. You're hearing warbles and artifacts of sound, and your brain, through pattern recognition, is trying to make sense of what you're hearing. So you think you're hearing something that's not really there. So by moving to the white noise generator, we took out a majority of the warbles and artifacts, and then we used software to take out the remaining. We then once the voice was elevated, we would cut out at the end the white noise, leaving nothing but the voice answering the question. So the clarity then improved tenfold. And then when we went from Staticom to Staticom 2.0 and now Staticom 3.0, those advancements also were in the clarity and the length of the communication.
So, Tony, how does it work in a practical sense? How would you normally use your equipment to help uh, get these messages from the other side?
Well, the nice thing about it is Staticom 3.0 today, you can turn it on, you can listen to them speak to each other about every subject under the sun, even things like them having disagreements or personality conflicts, or they're talking about what a lovely day it was or what they did the other day. It is communication not any different than we have here on the 3D world. Then there's other subject matter where we will question saying, what are you talking about? What was that word? What was this? And then they'll answer literally by me speaking in my normal tone of voice. There's no mics, there's no word banks, there's no AI generated text or speech, there's no internet involved. It's a closed circuit system. There's no mic for me to speak into. I speak just in my normal voice. I can do this at haunted locations. I can do this in my home. There's not a spot yet that we found that if we turn it on, that the voices aren't there. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So it also gives repeatable responses, meaning I can turn it on right now and those voices are there. Or I can go, I mean, we just came back from multiple different states doing different presentations on it. Those voices are there. And it doesn't matter time of day, day of week, or time of year.
And it's real time, so you're processing what's going on, and you can hear what's being said as it's being said, literally.
Correct. So, like we were talking about EVP, which was record and review, this is live two-way communication. So, everything that would have been done in the review process of an EVP from a digital recorder, you load it to your computer, you raise the volume, you denoise it, you may speed it up or slow it down. All of that is done in real time. So we don't have to all we have to do is ask a question and wait for them to answer, because all of that's done in real time. And the other thing we did in real time was slow down live white noise in real time, because through um, past ITC researchers, one of the things they said is sometimes spirits will speak so fast that you won't even catch what they said. It's quicker than the human vocals could ever speak, and so fast that sometimes the human brain can't even interpret it that fast. So when we slowed it down 50%, we found out that things that sounded like a vowel sound were actually a full sentence. And so we applied that and let it run live so that we could hear everything that was being said.
And do you always have to apply that slow down, or do you find you've kinda gotta tweak it with each session?
There are certain times it requires a slight tweak, but for the most part, 50% works very well to hear with everything being said.
Okay. And have you got any particular, like, times or sessions or moments that really stick out in your mind as going, "Well, that is just phenomenal, what we've just heard then."
There, I have hundreds of them. I mean, we've been doing this for so long, but I mean, I asked a question. Um, I wanted to know, since I'm human and when I speak, I create vocal disturbances in the atmosphere. I'm creating sound waves through my voice box. If they're not human anymore and they're supposedly now energy, frequency, or vibration, and they don't have human ears, how do they hear me speak? The answer came back, we call it death. Energy of your mind That's the thing. Were the exact words from that clip, which was fascinating to us because doing years of EVP work prior, a lot of times we'd notice that the answer would show up on the recorder before we even finished asking it, which again reinforces their response. They don't need my vocals. The only thing that needed my vocals was the recorder, so they know so the recorder could capture what question I asked, but they didn't. We believe that that is the connection between what we believe is universal consciousness, one mind that every human on earth is a fractal portion of. And that connection from fractal consciousness as being human has a direct connection back to universal consciousness. And just by me thinking the answer, they can turn around and say it. Like we've done tests where we randomly pulled 100 random past internet questions and asked, and the answers would come through. I would take my glasses, hold them up, and say, Spirits, what am I holding in my hand? And they would respond, glasses or spectacles. It could be a spoon, it could be my watch, but they would answer with timing, relevance, and intelligence.
So it's more like it's just facilitating almost like telepathy. What you're thinking is what they pick up, and then you can't get that back in the same way, but it comes through and you can decipher it
Technology.
through Staticom. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. And that's a great point. People always ask, okay, well, how do mediums then, psychics, get their information? Same way. If everything is energy, frequency, or vibration, and Nikola Tesla said that back in the 50s, he said, if you want to understand the universe, forget materialistic, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Well, that's what we believe consciousness is: energy, frequency, and vibration. And if they're able to send vocals into technology, there's no reason that can't be done to a human being that is porous enough or mentally open enough to receive that, interpret it, and then tell people what they're getting or what they're feeling. So absolutely it would be the same principle.
So have you noticed that the quality of the communication has improved, not necessarily to do with the how good your technology is, but have you seen any sort of changes there over time?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, the communication grew just by us constantly doing this, by them trusting us, knowing that we're not going to do anything wrong with it, that our intentions were good. But the technology definitely played critical roles in clearing up that speech. And today, 3.0 can literally give communication not any different than what you and I are having right now. A question asked, a response given, and then a further question can be asked, you can change the question and ask again, and the responses keep coming back and forth, back and forth. When we hit Staticom and Staticom 2.0, that would last for a while. We could ask a couple of questions, but then it would disappear. When we advanced Staticom 3.0, it no longer stops. The only two things that'll shut it down is if we turn the method off or the spirits just decide that we're done talking and don't answer anymore. But those are the only two things that will keep answers from coming in.
I understand there's also tonality comes through. So if the spirit was previously embodied as a child or as a man or a woman, you can hear that tonality. Is that right?
Yes, each voice is individualized. And the best thing about it, and this was always one of my fascinations with even starting with EVP, was I could tell whether it was male or female. I could tell whether it was an adult or child. I could tell what language they were speaking. I could tell if they had a territorial accent or dialogue. I could tell their emotional state. Are they happy? Are they angry? Are they upset? All before I even listened to what the response was to my question. That was a bucket load of information to get even prior to hearing the response. But yes, every voice has its own tonality, personality. Um, male voices are deeper and rougher than female voices. Female voices are softer, more petite. And we've actually had people identify the voice of past loved ones when asking for and getting a response.
All right. So that must be that must create a few tears to actually hear a relative who's passed on and recognize their voice.
We were just at an event called Phenomicon, and we gave a 2-hour presentation on this. While the audience literally surrounded us after and said, "Do you have this device with you?" And we said, "Yeah, we do." While they went and asked the people that were running it, "Can he have a room so he can do this?" Well, we did. We ran an hour and a half live session. We literally had people that dropped off their chair on their knees, just crying because of the response they got at recognizing the voice and because of the contact that they heard and that was made.
Fascinating. So I've had lots of channels and psychics and mediums on the show, and it's there's like this variety of different. There's people who have passed over, on the other side, and you speak to them, but then there's also other beings who may not have ever been embodied, and then there's like collective sort of groups of consciousness as well that have the ability to communicate through channels and things. Have you noticed that there's this variety, or is it generally just people who have crossed over that communicate?
No, I mean, if you we had to reevaluate our entire understanding of what we believed reality to be, both from the 3D living world and the afterlife, based on information that we got through doing this research and these tests. We believe there is a universal consciousness. We believe that consciousness is the ontological primitive of life. It is the one aspect that can't be reduced. Um, you can't break it down any further. It's at its primitive form. We believe that when you live your life, you hopefully grow, expand, become more knowledgeable, learn lessons. And when you return back to the other side, you regroup with universal consciousness, and all that information is then shared. Can there be spirits that are part of that universal consciousness that have never been embodied in human form? Yeah, we believe that's possible. But we also believe that universal consciousness, if it truly is one mind, that means it connects to every living thing, whether that be extraterrestrials, what people call multidimensional, all that knowledge is part of universal consciousness. And then when life as a human goes back to it, anything you learned, anything that you experienced, all becomes part of universal consciousness information. That would be necessary to allow universal consciousness to grow. Because a single mind, if it was just single and didn't have fractional portions of people living and learning, it couldn't grow on its own. So this would allow universal consciousness to grow and expand, just like space expands at the speed of light daily. In order for space to expand at that kind of speed and rate, universal consciousness or the universal mind would need to follow the same in order to keep up, or one of them would become obsolete.
And have you ever had any communication come through that's where they've declared it's like it's non-human, so it's something alien has come through?
We can't identify. People always ask us, how do you know who you're speaking to? We don't. If we can understand it, they speak one of 4 languages that between my wife and I, we understand: English, Tagalog, Japanese, um, sorry, 3. Um, so if they're speaking one of those languages and we're understanding that, we can't determine where it's coming from. We believe spirits are of a non-locality, meaning they can answer from anywhere. So if they're speaking a language that we can figure out, how would we know any different who's making that speech happen? We wouldn't until we can somehow figure out how to develop a spirit caller ID. We don't know. It's a language we understand. Most of the time, it's English, although we've had many other languages come through. Um, but if it's English and it's understandable and we can figure out what they're saying, which most of the time we can, could it be something other communicating in our language to us? Sure, it could. But can I identify that? Can I say with absolute certainty that that's what it is? No, not at this point. I cannot.
And is it a question that you can ask? Like, were you previously here on Earth, or were you from somewhere else?
Absolutely, we can ask, and we ask them what, who are you, and what do you like to be referred to as? And the two responses they gave were spirit or consciousness. Now
Right.
we asked about extraterrestrials, and they said, yeah, they do exist. But have we ever been talking to one? Not to our knowledge, or not that we've been able to identify.
So I'm not sure if this is even possible, Tony. We'll chop it out if we need to. But are you able to replay a practical example for us, or is it better for us to like refer people to one of your other videos?
I gave you a bunch of them that literally go from DRV to the newest um, Staticom 3.0. We're literally asking questions, answers are coming. We're asking more questions, answers are coming. I can try to do it, but you got to give me permission to share. I have to I
Yeah,
have to load.
we can do that. Yeah. We'll give it a go anyway. And if it doesn't work out, you can just edit it out.
It'll work. StreamYard works very well for this.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to share screen, so give me 1 second. All right, so this is the actual clip I was just talking about, where I wanted to know, how do you hear me speak? This is that clip, and I'll play it. How do you hear me speak? So there's that clip. And as you can clearly see, the first response was, we call it death. So that was literally just a description. Hey, we're not human anymore. We've passed over. And then the other voice that says energy of the mind, that's the thing. Okay, first of all, that's an unbelievable response. It follows the what's called the survival theory in science, that they're trying to prove that consciousness does in fact survive death. And then when you look at things like how many years has materialistic science been the focus, and then we went to quantum physics, and now what they're calling quantum consciousness. It is so great to see consciousness start to get put into scientific research, religious background. Um, Nikola Tesla said if science would spend a decade looking at non-physical phenomenon, they would learn more in a decade than they've learned in the entire existence of scientific review. But
Mm.
but that's the kind of question answer I'm talking about. I mean, distinct, with timing and relevance, and answered my question with intelligence.
Has that been the biggest paradigm shift for you, Tony? The sort of the idea of universal consciousness, or the consciousness is fundamental.
Absolutely. And it even goes deeper than that. It goes to the point, when you dive into analytic idealism, that all of life is mental, meaning that reality as we believe it to be may not even be what we think it is. Now, how you're probably thinking, okay, how can you say that? Well, let's say you go to your computer and you open your computer up and you see little folders, and you know inside that folder are files. So you open that folder and then you go looking for the file that you're looking for, and then you open it. But that's not the reality of what is happening. You're not seeing the zeros and ones of data that are actually occurring to create what you're seeing. And we believe life is like that. We believe that we have a dashboard of instrumentation. It's your sight, your hearing, your sense of smell, touch, taste. Those are our instrumentation to get through life. But our hearing is limited to 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. We don't hear any of the sound spectrums above or below that. Our sight um, is limited to visual light only. We don't see infrared. We don't see anything above or below those spectrums. So when people ask us, okay, if all this is occurring, if spirits are around us all the time, how come we can't hear them? How come we can't see them? Well, because the human body was physically made to block it, because we're not supposed to know. And only through these technological advancements have we been able to take a vocal that is outside of human hearing and translate it to a level where we can hear it.
So you've been going for 15 years, or Tony. What keeps you going? What keeps you enthusiastic? You clearly just it's a thing for you.
Yeah, the fascination is in what can we learn? What aspects of reality have we been taught over and over and over through life that may not be correct? What are we missing? What can be gained from it? What can be learned from it? And then questions like, how much are they allowed to say? How much are they allowed to tell us? Is too much information dangerous? And where do they stop? Pushing those boundaries is what keeps us going. What else can we learn? What else can we find out? How many other questions can we get answered? But for every question that's answered, there's 100 more questions that come behind it going, okay, I understand that, but what about this, and this? So, it's a never ending game. Once you start going down that path, you have to keep going because you're drawn to it and you're drawn to see what else you can figure out.
So have you got any big questions that you're dying to get the answer to that you haven't got yet?
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions. In fact, people always say, did you ask how the pyramids were built or what's their purpose? Did you ask if Atlantis exists? Did did the crucifixion of Christ really occur and did it go as it's told? We could literally spend the rest of our life asking questions just to see what answers. But unfortunately, time is a limitation. The advancement of the system is critical. The improvement of it is critical. The research testing that we've been doing takes a considerable amount of time and money. And now, because we've advanced it to 3.0, to go to the next step of 4 or 5 or 6 takes twice the time, twice the money. And those challenges all have to be balanced to figure out what next steps are. But I could literally spend the rest of my life asking questions that just to see what answers I get.
So what are you mentioned new versions, so 4.0, what are you hoping to introduce with that other than, I guess better fidelity, better clarity, that sort of thing?
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many other things. There's things like, okay, if the spirits have a non-locality because time and space is a man-made construct, um, can we can we take the information we get and increase internet speeds 1,000 times without cables? If they can do it and it's happening through some energy, frequency, and vibration, like Tesla invented electricity that could be transmitted without cables, but yet we're still using cables today. But can video be added? Can we not only hear them, but can we see them? Can we have something similar to like you and I are communicating with right now, for the spirit world? I don't know. Possibly. Images can be captured. People do what's called a looping set with a video camera up against a TV that will display images on it. Can that be integrated? Possibly. Do I know that for sure yet? No. But those are all possible advancements for this in the future.
So have you ever had the Staticom used, outside of um, a personal, like in a sort of a commercial situation? Obviously, your own is a somewhat commercial situation, but have you ever had it used in a practical way that you thought, oh, I would never have thought to use it for that purpose before?
Well, there are so many uses for it. Some of them that I think are really good ideas, like cold cases, when law enforcement draws a blank and can't retrieve any future answers. Staticom might be able to point in a direction that may allow their investigation to continue. So there's one. Um, Uses such as relieving grief when somebody loses a family member or a spouse or a child. That grief is overwhelming and can last. Some people never fully recover from it. But to be able to get a response, hear that voice, and have them say, I'm not dead. I just transitioned. I'm still around. I'm still here. You'll see me again. That's unbelievably comforting to somebody who's suffering from grief.
So, tell us about if people want to get in touch with you, Tony, to find out more about what you do. Tell us about how they would go about that, and how people can get access to Staticom. I don't know whether it's actually a product that you have, or tell us about how all that works.
Sure. So there's two easiest ways to look up what we're doing. We have a website called entityvoices.com. You will see clips on there. You will see um, presentations we've given. You'll be able to find out where we're going to be next, where we're running it live, where we're giving demonstrations. There's write-ups on next steps, what we're looking at doing, how we're looking to develop it next. Whole boatload of information. The other one is just Facebook or any other social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, a couple others. I'm eluding me at the moment, but YouTube. If you just look up Staticom, you'll find it. There are hundreds of clips that we've captured with vocal responses on. So those are the best ways to contact us. Is this product available yet? No, it's not. Why? Couple of reasons. One, um, every time we think we're close to being able to release something, we find another way to upgrade it. And we don't want to have to go back like Windows and update, you know, every month, because that's again time consuming. We want to put out a product that we know works to the best of its ability. But the other reason, of course, is that currently this research for Staticom 3.0 is done by my wife and I, done by our own funds, our own time, and our own expenses. The next steps to go above 3 are going to require a lot more expense and a lot more time to make that happen. So we want to make sure that we've got everything in place, that everything's working the way we want it to, and then will this be released. And we want it released because we want people to be able to find out for themselves that there's nothing fake here. This is as real as it gets. And if you ask a question, you will get a response.
I'll ask a different question that I don't really ask people. So when you think about, there's a lot of upheaval going on with us at the moment. There has been for a while. When you sort of project yourself out into the future, where do you think this is all going?
Well, I mean, I think part of it has to do with what we were talking about before about that, you know, human life, and it doesn't matter whose if we're all connected, but it's not in a good place. And raising those elevations, those vibrations, those frequencies of the human race, I think is super important. And I think this could help with that. I think it could help with a lot of things, but there's also dangers involved. Um, who's going to get a hold of this and what do they plan to do with it? Is this going to be weaponized? Is it going to be used for malicious purposes? Um, there's it has the ability to challenge science as we know it today. It has the ability to challenge religion. And it doesn't matter what religion. It could literally challenge all of them. And then something as simple as court cases. If you're in a court case fighting over a will and who's getting this house and who's getting what, I mean, if Staticom could literally bring up the person who wrote the will and said, no, the house is supposed to go here and this is supposed to go there. How does that change things like court cases? And, you know, the possibilities are endless. And the real question then becomes is the world ready for something like this?
Yeah, I suppose it's like, remote viewing. The CIA used remote viewing, that I'm sure they still do, and often for nefarious purposes, or to spy on others. So using it for what may not be a particularly good purpose, but at the same time, they can't have it all to themselves. And there's lots of other remote viewers, and there seems to be more popping up every day
Right.
who, and use it to actually expand what we know about the world, or to get information out that's sort of alternative to what we might see on mainstream. So I suppose, as long as there's always two sides to it, isn't it? It can be used in a way that you may not wish, but at the same time, I think it's probably, if you try to halt that, it's like a juggernaut that you can't halt anyway. It's a bit like AI. It's coming anyway, whether you like it or not. You can either sort of
Exactly. Right.
participate and hope to direct things in a good way, or someone else will do it.
I agree. If I have time, can I play another clip?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So this one I'm going to play now is actually when we first got Staticom 3.0 up and running. Now, there's not any scientific research or questions being asked here because it literally is less than 24 hours old on this clip. But what you're going to see here is the real two-way communication that I'm talking about, where I can ask a question, a response comes in, and it just keeps going back and forth with real-time two-way communication. So here's that clip. Rathman, I heard you say Rathman. Yes. What did you want to say to Roger? It's Tony. Spirits, can you hear me? Yes, okay. That was a loud voice that just answered. What's your name? That's a strange name. How many spirits are here with us right now? A lot? A lot, yeah, that's what I thought you said. Because there's so many of you, is that why all the background chatter? They're talking? Do you have any messages for us?
Wow.
So, like I said, I mean, it's two-way communication with timing and relevance. And, one of the other clips that comes to mind when we were talking about cold cases was another night I was doing another upgrade and my wife came in and she had a very distraught look on her face. And I said, Cherie, are you okay? And she said, no. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, well, do you remember Lennon? I said, of course I do. Well, why would you ask me that? And she said he was shot and murdered on Monday. This was 2 days later. Well, we had Staticom up and running because I was doing research with it. And they mentioned him while she was telling me what happened. So I said, wait, Cherie, I said, grab your phone, just record what comes out of it and ask some questions. So she did. And even I did. And literally Staticom acknowledged that he knew he had been shot, that he was no longer here. And then at the end, we literally said, do you know who did it? Because it was even captured on CCTV TV. This gentleman was from the Philippines. He was a politician. Some guy came running up, shot him point blank, jumped on a motorcycle, and took off. And we asked, you know, who did it? Well, Staticom literally gave us a first name. And then I verified that the name was a first name. And I said, what's the last name? We got it. We got the first and last name. Now, can we prove it? Right now, no. But we released it because if the information ever does come back and it is accurate, that was the only way we could prove that we had this information prior. But was also why we said cold cases would be an excellent choice for this particular method of communication.
Well, Tony, this has been a fascinating conversation. So, good luck with your future development. Sounds like you've uh, never a dull moment with
No,
your
no,
days.
there's not.
Yeah. Well, I
Never,
appreciate
never.
you coming on, and maybe we'll have you back if people want to ask some questions. We might have you back for a live stream again. So I appreciate you being here.
All right. Thank you, Rod.